Jersey Central with Bert Barron.
Where the Forge Jewelers Omega time is 7:37. Forge Jewelers, the official jeweler of 1450 WCTC. Hey, coming up sometime between now and 8 o'clock, we're going to have another contest this hour. It is for your chance to win one of the remaining pairs of tickets for tonight's Somerset Patriots game. I'm being honored before the game, and I would be honored if you would join me. So we're going to give you a chance to call in and grab one of the remaining pairs of tickets coming up in just a few moments. Well, it's an important anniversary. 48 years ago, America launching the Apollo 11, 3 astronauts to the moon. Rather important time in our history, and no matter how many years go by, the phrase, "that's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind," will really resonate. Joining me now on the Jersey Central Newsmaker Hotline, it's a pleasure to welcome in the director of the Coalition to Save Manned Space Exploration. We're going to talk about this historic day and really the future of space exploration, if it has one. Let's find out from Art Harmon, who was with us this morning on WCTC. Art, good morning. It's Bert Barron. How are you?
Good morning, Bert, and glad to be on with you.
Good to have you here. Take me back to 1969, Art. I was barely a year and a half old. Walk me through what was going on. What was the feeling like in America with this spectacular moment that was happening with the lunar launch?
Oh, my gosh, absolute enthusiasm. I'm a little bit older, so I was a kid eagerly watching the landing, and then that first step that still can bring tears and chills to myself when I think about Neil Armstrong taking that first step of a human being onto another world. That is going to echo down in history, and indeed, 1,000 years from now, people are going to remember the words that he spoke.
I don't know if it was ever discussed, Art, but exactly how long did they stay on the surface of the moon? It never really comes up as to how much time they spent there.
Well, they were there for about 20 hours total from when they landed to when they took off. Kind of a funny part is that after they landed, of course, and there's a lot of sort of checklist things that they're doing, and then of course after a while they got out and walked around the moon, but after they got back in and packed up, guess what they did? They went to sleep. Now I don't know about you. They wanted them to be rested for the takeoff and all of the stresses of making sure that went well. But I wouldn't be able to sleep if I'm
be so
on
excited.
The moon.
It's like, wait a minute, the moon is out here, and you want me to sleep? I can't sleep now. I'm on the moon.
Exactly, but you look at photographs of the era and my memories from the eyes of a kid, and it was this incredible enthusiasm that we just don't see, unfortunately, in today's world, with good news that just makes everyone feel warm inside. And the photos of millions of people camping out and lined up down in Florida to watch the launch. You'll see, if you look around on the web, pictures of people crowding around everybody's TV sets, neighbors and friends, or TVs. Back in the day, there'd be TV shops and there'd be some TVs on in the window, and people would just be, stopping and looking. But it wasn't just here in America; it was all around the world. It was probably the most watched event in history.
Very cool time in our history. The reason for the quarantine, Art, when they came back, what was the reasoning behind that?
Well, it might seem silly now, but at the time they were worried, what if there is life on the moon of some sort, and that they bring something back, and then everyone keels over on Earth, and Earth starts to look like the moon. So they actually held them for about 2 weeks in a trailer, one of those Airstream trailers that was made airtight and had its own, food and air systems. And they just watched them to make sure that they didn't get sick and turn green or something.
For your role, Art, as director of the Coalition to Save Manned Space Exploration, this is a pretty important question to you. Why have we never gone back, and do you think we should go back at some point to the moon?
Well, it is such a shame that we haven't. And it really boils down to political will. We have the technology to go back. The phone that you hold in your hand has more computing power than the Apollo lander. So you could literally put an app on your phone that says moon landing and have it run the spacecraft with much more power than the computer they had. It's not that expensive. NASA's budget back in during the moon era was only 3% of the federal budget. Today, it's shrunk incredibly to less than half of 1%. And yet this is the thing that inspires kids to go into STEM, engineering and so forth, aerospace, and it's the thing that keeps our global competitiveness on high tech and great jobs. And so we need to go back for those reasons, but we also need to go back, just as JFK said, because it is a great challenge. And we're not the only ones out there with plans and ideas to go to the moon. China has got serious plans. And I worry that if we aren't on the moon in the 2020s, that China will be. They'll be there whether we are or not.
Wow.
But if we're not, then they might do what they're doing in the South China Sea and say, hey, you guys abandoned it in the 1970s. It's ours now. Sorry, if you want rare earth minerals, then you're not going back to the moon. But this would be a wonderful, exciting adventure that every American could participate in one way or another, from just watching and cheering to being part of it, writing the code, designing spacecraft, to heck, painting it and whatever. There's somebody out there who wants to be part of sending us to the moon. And this is where we'll learn how to live on Mars. You can't just go to Mars. That would be kind of like taking a weekend hiker and saying, here, quick, let's go to Mount Everest. You've got to have that sort of the steps up to it. And the moon is where we will learn how to live on Mars.
Okay. So I'm glad you had mentioned, too, about the programming and the space program and the cost and whatnot, because that's always the argument that I heard about Art was, well, you know what, the government is paying to launch rockets and we can't even feed people in this country. But when you put it the way that you did, where it's just such a small percentage with a tremendously immense return, it really makes a lot more sense when you position it that way. So I'm glad that that's the approach that you took. Recently, the president signed some legislation, a brand new NASA and space policy. Is this good for future of space exploration, Art?
It is good. If it's very good, then and it may be very good. It really depends on the implementation and if Congress is willing to put up the money. You don't need a lot more. Maybe 50% more of the budget or double it over several years. But the vice president was down at Kennedy Space Center a couple weeks ago and announced what he had promised back during the campaign, that he would run a National Space Council. And what this would do is take a look at where we are, where we want to be, in 10, 20, 30 years, and all the things we need to do between now and then. We haven't had that for years, and our space program over the last decade has been in a tailspin, and such that we can't even launch American astronauts on American rockets. They have to go to Russia.
Yeah, that's true. Art Harmon, director of the Coalition to Save Manned Space Exploration. Great speaking with you this morning. Is there a website where people can go to get more info about your group?
Absolutely. SaveMannedSpace .com, and it's the same on Twitter and Facebook. Save Manned, MANNED, space.
Very good. Art Harmon, thank you for your time this morning. It was great kind of reminiscing, and let's get the dialogue going as far as the future of this, because at some point, space travel will become possibly critical to the survival of the human race, I think, and we got to keep this going,
correct.
I think. I appreciate it. Art, thank you for your time this morning. Hopefully we could talk again
Pleasure
soon.
being on with y'all.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. Art Harmon, my guest from the Coalition to Save Manned Space Exploration. 48 years ago, you were watching this.